Okay, so hello and welcome to the week 5 of plastic waste management course. So now we are starting the second part of this course. We already finished first 4 weeks, and I hope that you have been keeping up with the quizzes, and also I strongly encourage you to make use of the discussion forum for discussion, and also not even just for asking question to us, but also discussion among all the different participants. We have more than 9,500 students who have registered for this course. So, there are quite a good number, and many of them are very active. So, I encourage you to be active as we make progress in this course. So, in this week we will focus on what is the impact of plastic on health. So, when we talk about health, one of the major plastic impact which gets lot of attention, which is getting lot of attention is on marine life. So, when we what is happening in plastic in ocean. So, we will talk about that. We will also talk about effect on other wildlife, on the animals, domestic animals as well as some wildlife animals, because plastic is making way to wildlife as well. And then what are the chemicals of concern from plastics, what is the human health aspect, and some of the environmental issues associated with that. So, that is what we will be trying to cover in this week 5. As you know, every week we will have 5 videos of around 30 minutes each. So, let us get started with the first video for the week 5. And as I said, the concept covered will be impact on plastic on marine life, effect on wildlife and human health, and the environment. So, when we talk about plastic in marine, that is one of the biggest news that made even the last World Environment Day. National Geographic came up with a magazine which was Plastic or Planet, and you may have seen that magazine. If you have not, just Google it, you will be able to see at least part of that magazine, which is available for free. So, this Plastic or Planet magazine was talking about how the plastic is getting into the ocean, and not only they also try to project what will happen to plastic in ocean, say a few decades from now. And it is said in that one of the article in the magazine that by 2050, which is around to right now it is 2019. So, we are looking at 31 years from now. In 31 years from now, we will have more plastic in ocean than fish. One of the reason is, of course, we are doing overfishing. We are the amount of fish that we are taking out of ocean is much higher than what it can naturally replenish based on the fish population. So, that is one aspect, but at the same we are making, if we do not manage the plastic properly, if the plastic is mismanaged, we will end up more plastic in oceans, and not only plastic floating in the ocean, but plastic in the bodies of inside the fish. So, when you and I consume some fish, we will be getting exposed to those plastics and associated chemicals with plastics, which will get into our body too. So, that was kind of an alarming situation which was put forward. So, that was also discussed during the World Environment Day in India, and National Geographic team was in India. They were part of that World Environment Day program in Vigyan Bhavan. And finally, the government of India announced that by 2022 we will ban all single use plastics, and many states around the country, many cities around the country are already putting ban in place, which we discussed in the previous week. So, the whole concept of this ban and other stuff is because of the concern related to plastic environmental and human health impact. So, release of plastic is happening into the in result of inappropriate waste management. So, see again the bottom line is, it is not that if we have a proper waste management system in place, which is essentially what we talk about in a urban setting, we say that it is the waste from for municipal solid waste. It is the municipal solid waste that we are mostly worried about, because this plastic also makes way for the municipal solid waste. So, in the municipal solid waste, plastic is a big part. Right now, it is around 12% in Indian context. So, if we manage this plastic waste properly, if you have a source segregation in place as per municipal solid waste management rules 2016, if you follow the plastic waste management rules that government of India has and many governments across the world has, so we can try to make our case in terms of having a proper waste management practice. Right now we have inappropriate waste management. So, that is the biggest problem we have. The inappropriate waste management is what is causing a lot of so this inappropriate waste management, which includes plastic waste as well, which is creating a lot of problem in terms of plastic getting into the ocean. Improper human behavior, that is another thing is there, because we are not ready to segregate the waste. We are still many times we know that plastic is bad for us, plastic is bad for ocean, plastic is bad for environment, but still we keep on using plastic. Not only plastic, a lot of other material which we know is we should not use, we should gradually phase this out. But since they are so convenient, the convenience actually take over our behavior, and then improper human behavior, we don't segregate it properly, we just do a lot of littering or incidental pollution. So, the release of plastic getting into the environment is because of improper waste management. So, if we have a proper waste management, it will help. If we can work with human behavior, that will help, and then if we can take care of incidental pollution, especially from industries and other sources. So, if we can work on these sectors, then only we can prevent the plastic pollution in ocean, surface water and other places. So, portion of plastic litter, many of the plastic litter doesn't go to landfill, and it will keep around on the earth's surface. It will travel by wind, it will reach river, and eventually from river it will go to the sea. So, that is why in the marine environment, so if you mismanage a plastic, you might be living several hundred kilometers away from sea, but if you are mismanaging plastic, if a city is mismanaging a plastic, that plastic waste, especially those thin plastic, very thin ones, which floats in the air, which goes with the wind, can end up in the surface water and finally to ocean. So, it is not that somebody living few hundred kilometers inland is not contributing to sea pollution of plastic. He or she might be contributing if the plastic is not managed properly. In a highly populated, so if you have too much population, you have the land based sources, that is input to plastic waste. SIP generates a lot of major source of marine debris as well. So, as you go into the ocean, you find that SIP, especially fishing vessels, container ships. So, they will have lots of packaging material and other stuff. They get their food supplies with lots of packaging, and most of the waste material they just dump into the ocean. So, that is but that is why we have lots of waste finding out in the ocean because of the SIPs that are going around. Many times even the sewage, they just release it into the ocean. So, because they do not have a proper sewage treatment plant there, so they just release the sewage on the ocean. So, those so your urine, fecal matter, like a sewage, you take water, you take shower in the ship, and those water, then packaging material. See, if it is a fishing vessels, sometimes they lose their fishing nets, that also goes into the ocean. So, all those things makes way to the marine, and that is where in the marine environment, and that is how the plastic ends up there, and it starts creating problem for us. So, land based sources, municipal landfills, location on coast, transport by waste by rivers from landfills. If a river has a touch to the littering and other stuff happening at the landfill, any other source of debris along river or waterway system, discharge of untreated sewage, stormwater, industrial facility, tourism, and all those things kind of makes way there. Then ocean based sources, we have nearly 5.6 billion tons of marine debris every year come from ocean based sources, which is 88% of the total marine debris input. So, this is the ocean based sources, which is those big ships which goes around on the ocean, that contributes nearly 88%. That is a huge chunk of waste actually coming from the SIPs, just by SIPs. Daily about 5 million items of solid marine debris are estimated to be thrown overboard or lost from SIPs. So, think about this number, 5 million items of solid marine debris, and that is daily. So, daily about 5 million items of solid marine debris are estimated to be thrown overboard or lost from SIPs. So, that is a lot of waste that we are dumping into the sea from our ships, which goes around on the ocean. So that's a big concern. And main ocean based sources, if you look at break up over there, merchant ships, ferries, cruise liners, they form of many times they will have food and other stuff there as well. So household waste, sewage cargo hold waste, wadding straps, covering material, cargo residues, packaging material, plastic sheets and boxes, engine room waste, discarded medical and sanitary equipments. All these things are just going into the ocean. So that's the naval and research vessels have the same garbage as do the merchant ships, but also deliberate. Sometimes they also have some military items to dispose as well. So when we dump all these things into the ocean, of course, many of these things contains plastic, and then plastic becomes a source of pollution in ocean. And there are other things in ocean too. Plastic is getting a lot of news. Plastic, that's what recently I was reading some of the articles which they say that it looks like we are thinking that we will be just we'll do some plastic ban, and we'll just work on some of this plastic pollution, and then whole world's environmental problem will be solved. That should not be, that's not the way it should happen. Plastic is only one part of the problem. We have lots of environmental problem, we have lots of waste management problem. We should not get carried away. Usually that's what happens. We get carried away with one issue, and then we neglect all the other issues associated with the in general issues which are maybe more important. Right now we know that plastic is creating a problem like plastic has a negative impact. So it's sewage. Like many of our sewage treatment plant in the country is not working. Many of the we don't have sewage treatment plant. The capacity is also not there, and not only in India, many countries around the world, mostly developing countries, they don't have much. They don't have 100% sewage capacity. So that is also a problem. That's actually is maybe a bigger problem than the plastic pollution. But we get into one issue and then we try to neglect all the other issues, and which should not happen. We have to have a balanced approach where we look at all the problems and try to solve and them one by one. Pleasure craft. This is again another from these craft, primarily household waste. These are your pleasure vessels which goes on ocean. We'll have sewage, oil containers, fishing gears are dumped either from ignorance, negligence, or lack of reception facility in local harbors. So we just drop it there. Fishing vessels in areas far away from urban development, discarding fishing gear is responsible for 50 to 90%. So look at this number, 50 to 90% of the total marine debris is coming from fishing vessels as you go away from land. So it's a lot of waste going there. There are several reasons. Fishing gear is abandoned, fishing gear is discarded, fishing gear is lost, containers are lost sometimes too. So one of the issues, as if you remember, we talked about that earlier, that the reason we started looking this plastic pollution in the ocean is one of the Nike container, one of the container having lots of Nike shoes, they had by accident they got dropped, like a lot of shoes were lost in ocean. There was some problem with that container, it got loose and it opened, and then many shoes get onto the ocean, and the Nike company decided to recover all those shoes so that it does not become a plastic pollution. It does not become not only plastic, like it cannot become a pollution in ocean. And when they started looking at removing this Nike shoes, they found that there are lots of, actually Nike shoes only a tiny thing. Now there are lots of other waste in there, especially originating from different types of plastic floating in the ocean, and then that's raised a lot of awareness in terms of plastic showing up in our water bodies, including in seas and oceans. So in terms of land-based sources, if you look at the land-based sources, how it gets into the water. So if you start, we use a lot of cosmetics and personal care products. We use a lot of, there is a use of a lot of cosmetics and personal care products. So that contains plastics, microplastics, a lot of microplastics are used. Clothing, like some of those clothings have microplastics now, especially those shiny t-shirts and the shiny stuff that you wear. So plastic, recycled plastic PET is gone into making those wrinkle free and like a what says it will not get wet. So, it is like a wet free, or kind of the things that you use for the t-shirts, especially sports t-shirts. Those contains a lot of microplastics, and so when you wash them, they get into the water as well. So, there are some it goes into the air, things goes into the air. Plastic films are used in agriculture, littering of plastic waste, festival events and coastal tourism. So, if you drop off lot of things in a coastal area, commercial and recreational fishing, pallets and debris from ship decks, aquaculture, oil and gas platforms. So, all are the different sources from where the plastic gets into the ocean. So, that they go into the ocean, either there are different modes of transport, let us say from domestic and industrial wastewater discharge, from a storm water runoff, wind blown, direct disposal, which is sometimes intentional, sometimes accidental. Landfill leachate will have some microplastics, extreme weather events. So, we have it's like a tornado or hurricane and those kind of stuff, which creates a lot of waste as well. So, there are different ways this land based plastic ends up in waterways, and then finally to ocean, because ocean is the kind of sink for all these for all the waste. So, it kind of acts as a sink. Whatever is there in the surface water will eventually end up in the ocean. So, ocean plastic, if you look at the global map and look at the different oceans and try to look at their plastics. So, here you can see the color has been given to us in terms of mismanaged plastic waste in tons, and darker the blue set, more is the numbers, and anything with the darkest blue, which is this color right there, is greater than 5 million tons of mismanaged plastic waste. So, as you can see, the numbers are kind of very low in some of the like European countries, and also some countries in South America. US has slightly bluish shade, Canada is better. Then if the highest we see is in China, then in India, Pakistan, and those you can see those said over there. So, what does it mean is there are a lot of mismanaged plastic, and mismanaged plastic is getting from different countries into the water bodies and finally to the ocean. So, in the ocean there are several whirlpools of water which traps huge collection of waste in the currents. So, they are also called there is a like say gyres, or there is a lot of we have patches of plastic in the ocean. So, there is a Great Pacific Garbage Patch which is in the Pacific Ocean. We have North Pacific as well as South Pacific, which we will talk about a bit more. Then we have Indian Ocean, we have South Atlantic, North Atlantic. So, all these areas we are seeing some of the plastic which is just floating around and making a circle. It is just making a circle around it, and these plastics are floating there. And some of the areas of, if you look at the surface area of that floating plastic area, it is very high. It is pretty high area which they are occupying, and there are lots of plastic waste, and the plastics are getting broken down, they are getting into smaller pieces, and those smaller pieces are taken up by food by the aquatic species present there, especially fish and other species which are present there. They consume it, assuming that it's a food, and that creates a lot of health problem for those aquatic animal, and of course, it kind of goes up the food chain and may create health problem for humans as well. So, if you look at another way of looking at, where you show the main sources and movement pathways for plastic in environment. So, it's a debris. There are three major ways we can characterize it. We have some debris washed ashore on beaches. There are some debris in coastal water. There are debris from open ocean which may also sink to the seabed. So, there are three ways, three major categories. So, we have debris which is washed ashore on beaches. You leave a lot of stuff on the beach, and debris in the coastal water, which kind of comes from different sources, and the debris which kind of goes into the sediment and kind of stays below, and then which kind of interacts with the water once. And also, it's many times these smaller species, they try to stay very close to the sediment, and they consume all those plastic waste over there. So, and then if you look at some of the freight and transport stuff for the plastic in the ocean, some plastic, we have plastic enters the ocean via rivers, beaches, or from seas. So, these are the way plastic is entering. Plastic is entering the ocean via rivers, beaches, or from ships. Then there are marine wildlife which is there, which ingests plastic. Some plastic is also washed along the coastline because of people were going into the beach and leaving things over there. Then you have the plastic kind of getting into this whole section here. This is the upper ocean part, this is the water column, and that's your ocean floor. And as you can see, there is sinking of plastic, and then also there is a resuspension of plastic. There is ingestion by organisms, there is also excretion by organisms which is happening, which create some plastic. Some plastic also sinks to the ocean floor, they just go down. Less than 1% of the local plastic actually they floats on the surface. So, most of the plastic is actually going down and settling down at the bottom, but it's around 1% is on floating on the surface, and that floating plastic on the surface becomes a food for these birds and marine wildlife, and they include fish. They think that that's a part of the food, because those plastic pieces are very shiny pieces. And if you look at any aquarium, or if you have been to any of these like aquarium places, you see that smaller the fish, more shiny they are. And since that's kind of, and the plastic, when it's broken down in a thin plastic, that also is very shiny when the sun is on the top. So, our birds or fish, the bigger fish, they get confused and they think that that plastic piece is actually a small fish to be eaten, and then they consume it, but there is no protein, and there is only it does not digest, so it becomes part of their body, and then it stays with the body and creates problem for the marine life. So, where does the all plastic end up? So, right now, if you look at in terms of global map, we have several patches going on around in like Indian Ocean, South Pacific, South Atlantic, North Pacific, and as you can see, for most of those places the range is pretty much similar. So, it is around 1000 to 2500 gram per kilometer square. So, that is where plastic garbage patches are there in subtropical gyres. So, that is where it's where you see those things are happening, and then these arrows here showing you the surface current or the direction of the surface current. So, that is how the currents are. So, as you can see, most of these big garbage patches, plastic garbage patches, have 1000 to 2500 gram per kilometer cube of plastic showing up there. So, Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which is in the Pacific Ocean, floats on the Pacific Ocean. It has microplastics, mostly microplastics, around 94% in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And if you look at their sources, 35% of it comes from synthetic textile, then 28% is the car tire, 24% is the city dust, 7% from the road markings, 3.7% from the marine coating, 2% from the personal care product, and 0.3% from the plastic pallets. So, if you look at, so in terms of the distribution of plastics from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, it is a synthetic textile which is more than 1/3. Usually we think that it is a PET bottle or the HDPE bottle or the film plastic that we throw away. They are harmful, they are problematic, but look, synthetic textile, which we use a lot, and that releases a lot of microplastic, and that becomes a problem, and that shows up in the ocean. Now, if you look at the size of the garbage patch, Great Pacific Garbage Patch is in 1.6 million square kilometer, which is around 2.3 times bigger than Texas. So, if you Texas is one of the biggest state, I think maybe the biggest state in US in terms of area, and so it's 2.3 times bigger than Texas, 2.5 times bigger than France, 725 bigger than largest landfill that we have in the world, which is an Apex regional landfill, 40 times bigger than New York City. So, it's a huge area. It's a huge area over which this garbage patch is spread. And out of in that garbage patch, if you look at carefully, you have synthetic textile, sources coming from car tires, city dust, road markings, marine coatings, personal care products, and plastic pallets. So, those are but these are plastic pallets and other are very low. Predominantly, it's synthetic textile, car tires, and city dust. So, those three is kind of more than close to 90%. So, that's so that's the source, and that so basically even most of them are not even part of the directly part of like municipal solid waste, but still if you as you can see, we do see these most of these plastic waste are trying to make way to the ocean. So, if you look at the Great Pacific Garbage Patch in slightly more detail, 46% of the total mass is made of discarded fishing gear. So, a lot of fishing gear, people have just dumped it. 1.6 million kilometer we talked about, 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic, 80,000 tons of garbage, 99% of everything is plastic in the Pacific Patch. Out of that 8% is microplastic, which we just talked about in terms of 13% is mesoplastic, which is like 0.5 centimeter to 5 centimeter. Then 26% is macroplastic, which is 5 centimeter to 50 centimeter, and 53% is megaplastic, which is greater than 50 centimeters. So, even more than 50% is actually greater than 50 centimeter, like half a meter. So, it's a big pieces, which is which again keeps on getting broken down because of the current happening there. So, it does get broken down as the time progress. So, there was some study done in terms of modeling the concentration of plastics in this Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and then an experiment was also done. So, if you look at this model data, which is kind of closer to Hawaii, they had looked at if you look at the concentration, which varies from kg per kilometer cube, it's from 0.01 to 100, and 100 being the darkest color. So, as you can see, we do have 100 kg per meter cube, kg per square kilometer in several pockets, and then we have 10, then we have 1, and we hardly see anything less than 1 in that Great Pacific Garbage Patch area. So, we still a lot of plastic is there. Then they had some measured mass concentration and compared the model, and it seems that there was some for microplastics, mesoplastic, macroplastic as well as megaplastic, and you can see that there are the variability which shows up in terms of different types of different concentration of plastic within that garbage patch area. So, let us stop at this particular time where we have so, we just kind of finished looking at the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So, Great Pacific Garbage Patch is one example of the big ocean pollution. There are other garbage patches out there. So, again, we are not going to cover each and every one, but those of you who are interested, you should go on YouTube, go on Google, and you should find more detail about other garbage patches as well. So, in general, we are providing as mentioned earlier, there is no textbook for this course. So, for every week we are providing some additional reading material. So, please look at that, where there are more information is also provided. Any question, put it on discussion forum, we will be happy to answer. So, again, thank you. So, this was the first video of the week 5 we just finished. We will go to the second video of week 5 after this and continue our discussion. Thank you.